Are you through hiking a long trail this year, but you're not one of those lucky people with endless money at your disposal to spend on your through hike? Well, in that case, I have 8 tips on how to not overspend on your through hike to avoid overspending traps. I hope you guys don't mind. I'm in my pajamas this evening. It's about 8 p.m. And if you watched my last video, I was talking about how this is sleepy season. So yeah, I'm cozy in my pajamas. Sorry, I'll get back outside soon and film a video outside in a pretty place. But for now, it's from my couch in my pajamas. I hope that you all are enjoying the cozy, sleepy season. And if you are through hiking this year, I hope that you're getting excited, getting prepared. I know that I was terrified before I started my Appalachian Trail through hike. For weeks beforehand, I was just like, I was a nervous wreck. I was having nightmares all the time. I was like, am I ruining my life? Da da da. Guess what? No, I wasn't. It was the best experience of my life so far. So if you are getting ready and you're nervous, just know that. Ooh, there was like a little fuzzy here. Anyway, let's get into these 8 tips on how to avoid spending traps, not overspend on your through hike. Number 1 is actually before you even start your through hike. This is to set yourself a gear budget and stick to it. And think about which items you maybe are gonna splurge on and which ones you're gonna maybe save on. Because you don't need, in order to be a successful through hiker, despite what you may see on YouTube or you may see on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, to be a successful through hiker, you do not have to have the most top of the line gear. I definitely did not have the most top of the line gear, and I successfully hiked the entire AT. Would it have been easier if I had had lighter gear? Oh, you betcha. But did I get it done anyway? Yes, I did. And actually my friend Workhorse on the trail, he was carrying gear from, gosh, I want to say like 20-year-old gear that was pretty heavy. And he also, his name was Workhorse because he hiked like long miles every day, slow and steady, but he had that heavy gear and he got it done. So I would say you want to look at your budget, see what you can spend on and what maybe you want to, get the cheaper versions of. So obviously the things that are going to make the most difference in terms of like the weight on your back and things like that is going to be your top 3. So your tent, your sleeping bag, and your pack. So maybe you have enough money to buy just like the top of the line of one of those items. And maybe you're a cold sleeper. So you decide you're going to buy a top of the line sleeping bag and a really nice sleeping pad to help you get through the nights. And so maybe you decide then, oh, maybe you'll get like a used Big Agnes tent on Facebook Marketplace instead of getting a brand new Z-Packs tent. You don't have to have a Z-Packs tent to be a cool through hiker, I promise. I do have a Z-Packs tent though, but that's just because I suffered for the weight that I carried on the AT. So then I decided, a couple years later when my used Big Agnes did finally bust, which I had for the whole AT except for the first like 3 days. When it finally did bust, I was like, I'm gonna treat myself and get myself a Z-Packs tent, but you don't have to have one, I promise. And you can also get the cheap versions of things like stoves and stuff sacks and why can't I think of the word headlamp? I was like, what is the light you put on your head? A headlamp. Get yourself a cheap headlamp. Just things like that aren't gonna make such a huge difference if you shave off an extra ounce or 2. You know what I mean? Like, you can get a really expensive stove if you want to, but I had on the AT, I had a $10 Amazon stove. It lasted me the whole way. It was fine. So get yourself a budget for gear, figure out what you're gonna spend on, what you're gonna not spend on, and stick to that budget. And then tip number 2 is to set a budget for during your hike. Just assume that you're gonna be out on the trail. Typically, it takes people to through hike between 5 and 7 months. So I would just go ahead and assume you're gonna be out there for 7 months just to be on the safe side. So assume you're gonna be out there for 7 months. Decide how much money you have to spend each month of your through hike. So typically they say that people spend about $1,000 a month that they're on the AT, for example. That number might actually be a little higher now with inflation. I haven't looked at the most recent numbers, so maybe take a look at the Appalachian Trail Conservancy website or the Trek to see what thru-hikers are typically spending now. Maybe consider like $1,200 a month instead of $1,000 a month. But anyway, so just say typically you're gonna spend like $1,000 a month on trail. If you have $7,000, you're gonna be on trail for 7 months. And then keep track of your expenses. Like when you have cell service, when you have Wi-Fi, make sure you're checking your bank statements to make sure that you're actually staying within your budget. Maybe you wanna actually track everything that you're spending money on. I did that on the Colorado Trail as I went. I didn't have a specific budget for the Colorado Trail because it was only a month. I was able to take PTO from work, so I was able to keep my job. So I went out there with the mindset that I was gonna treat myself, but I still wanted to know exactly what I was spending. So I was tracking my expenses as I went along. So maybe you wanna be just like putting in the notes section of your phone, like, oh, I spent $5 on laundry at X town, and I spent $22 on a burger and fries at this restaurant and whatever. And just make sure that you are staying under your budget. And you can even look ahead and say like, okay, this month I have $1,000 to spend, and you're looking ahead on the trail and you're thinking, okay, I wanna hit these 4 towns during this month. So that means that I can spend X dollars at each one of these towns. And then when you're in the towns, make sure that your lodging expenses, your restaurant expenses, your laundromat expenses, make sure those are all staying under your budget. And if you go over your budget, then you're gonna have to maybe skip a meal in the next town. You get the idea. Just set a budget, stick to it, know what you're spending, be aware of your finances, don't let things go off the rails. Number 3 is to stay out of towns if you don't need to go to them. If you have enough food with you and don't need to resupply, if you don't feel like you quite need a shower yet, maybe you don't need to charge your devices yet, skip the town. I know that it's really fun to go to the towns. It's one of my favorite things about thru hiking is to get to experience all the little mountain towns and meet the people and try all the food and those sorts of things. But if you are trying to stick to a budget, going into town is gonna be the biggest and easiest way to lose all your money because you're gonna get in there and you're gonna walk down the street and smell all the delicious restaurants, and you're gonna hear about other thru-hikers going to do the brewery and getting a beer, and you're gonna see the fancy coffee shops, and you're gonna want a nice warm bed and a shower. So you know what? If you're trying to save money and you don't need to go to the towns, just don't go in there because you will be tempted at the very least. You'll probably blow some money, but even if you don't, you'll be very tempted. Number 4, if you are going to go into a town, do not go in while you are hungry. It will be a disaster. You will run to the closest restaurant and you will order way more food than you are going to be able to consume because your eyes are going to be way bigger than your stomach, and you will have been dreaming about the food all week while you're out in the woods or whatever, and you will blow your money. So don't go into the town hungry. One way I like to do it when I'm trying not to go blow a bunch of money in town is I like to go camp right outside of the town, get up in the morning, have breakfast, have my coffee, make sure I'm not a ravenous beast, and then go into the town to do my resupply and my chores and all of that. And then at least if I do go to a restaurant or grab a bite somewhere, then I'm doing that not in like a crazy ravenous mindset. It's like they say you should never go to the grocery store while you're hungry. Never go to a town on a thru hike while hungry. And also, if you go to the grocery store while hiking, while hungry, you will end up with a pack or like a food bag that's not gonna fit in your pack, that's gonna weigh you down for the next several days because you're gonna have way too much food. So it's good advice to keep you out of the restaurants and to not go overboard at the grocery store. So do not go into a town hungry. Number 5, when you're gonna stay in towns, take the cheap options when it goes for lodging and showers and all that. Like maybe there is a laundromat in the town that has a paid shower, or a community center that has a free shower or a paid shower. Maybe you go do those shower options and then you don't have to say, stay the night in the town. That'll save you a bunch of money on lodging. If you do feel like you need to stay in for the night, or like you're just really dying for a bed, or you just really need a lot of time to charge all your electronics, stay in a bunk room at a hostel. Split a hotel room with your tramily or a couple of other hikers. Stay at a campground in the town that has showers and laundry. You get what I mean. Instead of getting yourself a nice hotel room to yourself, I know that sounds really nice a lot of the time, but I think that sharing rooms with people actually ends up always being really fun. It's good for building community, and it's really good for your pocketbook. So take the cheap options when it comes to lodging and showers and all that good stuff when you are in a town. Number 6, patch up and try to correct gear problems as they come up while they're still small. Maybe bring some tenacious tape or some duct tape along with you. I've even seen people bring little mini sewing kits with them to just patch up their gear and make sure that like the tiny problems don't suddenly become very big problems that you then are like really in your face and you have to deal with. Something to know about gear issues while you're on the trail too is that a lot of gear companies, if you are having like a real issue with their piece of gear, a lot of the companies, if you write to them and tell them what the problem is, they'll often send you a replacement part for free. They'll offer to fix it for you for free if you want to send it in. Sometimes if you're lucky, they'll even offer you a brand new piece of gear. When I was on the AT, my friend Ibex was having some issues with her Gossamer Gear pack, and she reached out to the company and they actually sent her a brand new pack out on the AT. I, on the other hand, was having some issues with my Osprey pack, and their customer service was terrible. So I never recommend going through Osprey myself. But Gossamer Gear, though, was fantastic for Ibex. And then I have a Gossamer Gear pack now, and I used it on the Colorado Trail this past summer. And I had my chest strap buckle broke. And so I reached out to them after that happened, told them what happened, and they sent me a replacement part for free. So I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, the customer service was great. So a lot of the gear companies are going to be like that. And then if you're on the AT, if you go to trail days, a lot of the gear companies are going to be there and they'll fix your gear right on site for free at trail days. So that's one reason to go to trail days. I know that some of the other trails have like trail days sorts of events, but I haven't been to any of the other ones, so I can't speak to those, but I would imagine it would be the same thing. So like I know the PCT and CDT both have trail days type events. I'm sure that there are gear companies there doing the same exact things. So check out those options as well before you're just like, oh, this broke, so I need to buy a brand new piece of gear, when that might not really be the case. Number 7, don't send yourself resupply boxes unless you have a special diet, like dietary restrictions, or maybe you're very picky, or maybe you know that there's a town that you are really not gonna like the options in. Because resupply boxes, first of all, can be a pain in the butt. And second of all, they can get really expensive and they're often really unnecessary. So if you haven't done a thru hike, you might not realize this, but you are gonna get so sick of certain foods and you're not gonna ever wanna look at certain foods ever again. And you're not gonna know ahead of time what you're craving that week or that month or that day or whatever. Like your stomach and your brain get real weird out there and you cannot predict ahead of time what it is you're gonna wanna eat. And resupply boxes are often huge pains to have to pick up because say you send it to a post office, you get to a town on Saturday afternoon, well then you gotta stay in the town until the post office opens on Monday. A lot of these small trail towns, small mountain towns have very limited hours of when their post office are open. It's just a lot of times resupply boxes are not worth it. And then it's the added cost beyond just the food of doing the shipping. And then of course the time cost of having to go get them. So unless you have a special reason for wanting to do resupply boxes, it is very, very often not worth it. But, maybe you want to send yourself a couple of special boxes, like choose a couple of towns where you're like, I'm gonna send myself all my favorite things, the fanciest backpacker meals, the best chocolate, like the best Trader Joe's snacks, whatever, more power to you. If you're on the AT, a couple of great places to do that would be Fontana Dam and Andover, Maine, because options there are very limited and pretty expensive. And on the Colorado Trail, I would say some really good options for that are Twin Lakes. You can send stuff right to the Twin Lakes General Store. The owner is amazing, super hiker friendly. They also have options at the Twin Lakes General Store, but it's a pretty small store. So, you know, you're going into the collegiates if you're going the normal southbound way, and that's like the hardest part of the trail, especially if you're doing the Collegiate West. So it'd be just nice to have all your favorite things going into the Collegiate Peaks Wilderness. And then another good place might be Silverton. They have a grocery store, but it's pretty small. And I stayed at the Avon Hotel and Hostel, and the owner there, Dan, is awesome. Again, like very hiker friendly. Lets you send packages there if you're going to be staying there. So I don't know about the other trails because I haven't done any of the other big ones, but I'm sure that if you did some research, there are hikers who have done those trails out there with similar advice on where you might want to send a couple of resupply boxes. But generally, if you want to save money, I would say don't send them. It just often is not worth it. I sent myself, for example, a box on the Colorado Trail to Lake City, sent myself way too much food, and I ended up mailing most of that food back to myself before I even left Lake City. So I paid for the shipping costs to Lake City, the shipping costs back to my place from Lake City, and the food costs of all the food that I didn't eat that's still sitting in my cupboard months later. So you get the idea. Keep yourself in check with those resupply boxes. And number 8, don't hike with people who are bigger spenders than you. Just like they say you should hike your own hike, don't go at someone else's hiking pace. Don't hike with people who don't have similar hiking goals to you. It's the same thing with money. If people are big spenders and you're not, then you're gonna have a hard time if you're sticking with those people, because you're gonna get to a town and they're gonna go wild and you're gonna be sitting there sad with your instant mashed potatoes. You know what I mean? And you're probably gonna be influenced. You're either gonna stick to your budget and you're gonna feel real sad as you're watching them eat a huge burger and fries while you're like eating your mashed potatoes, or you're gonna be influenced and you're gonna go in for the food too. So make sure that you're sticking with people who have similar interests. Like if you wanna be with people who are splitting hotel rooms and you're hiking with people who all like to get their own rooms when you go to town, I mean, that's not gonna work. So just be conscious of that. I will say my friend Ibex is like, she's such a foodie and she's a bad influence on me when it comes to eating restaurant foods in the towns. But it's okay because usually I have planned out my budget and I'm doing all of these other things. So if I'm a little bit influenced when it comes to the delicious foods in towns, that's okay as long as I'm sticking to my budget and all that good stuff. But she's worth it, but you know, she could tone it down on the restaurant food. She's such a little influencer. Anyway, you get the idea. So those are my 8 tips for not overspending on your thru hike. If you have done a thru hike, let me know your tips down in the comments on how to not overspend during it. And if you are doing a thru hike this coming year, I would love to hear which thru hike you're going to be doing. So let me know. All right, you guys, thanks so much for being here. As always, don't forget to subscribe for more hiking, backpacking, and outdoor content if you haven't already. And I will see you all next time.